Leadership has a certain mystique about it. The word in itself is used to describe a lot of different things about people. But I don't think it should be a mystery, because all of us are leaders in one way or another. I know we don't often think that, but it's true. Because when we think about leadership, all it really means is that we have an influence over other people to get them to do things. So you have a mom who is trying to get her son or daughter to eat their vegetables. Well, they're having an influence over their son or daughter. They're leaders of their son or daughter. A lot of people in pastoral ministry also kind of forget the fact that they're leaders too. They think, well, the pastor is the leader because he or she is the pastor. But when they have an influence over young people to become more loving and caring and serving, then they're being leaders. So I think a lot of times when we don't think of ourselves as leaders, it short circuits our ability to really do all the good that we can do. Harry Truman once described leaders, the old president from the 1940s. Everybody kind of liked Harry Truman, but he described a leader as a man who gets people to do things that they don't want to do and like it. Now you notice a couple of things about that description of leadership. One, it's a man, and they get people to do things they don't want to do and like it. There's a degree of manipulation in all that, isn't there? And it's a presumption that a leader has to be a man. Well, that was the 1940s. But today we realize that, number one, we're all leaders. And the question is not whether we're going to be a leader, but what kind of leader we're going to be. And that's the reason that in my own life, I've looked around for different models of leadership. And of course, the best model of all was Jesus, but also people like Pope Francis and Francis of Assisi were great leaders. Now, in modern, thinking, that may sound okay, but traditionally we never thought of these people, these great saints and spiritual leaders, as leaders and what that really meant and what kind of example they were giving. So I think we need to kind of break open the old paradigm, the old model we had of what leadership was all about, and realize that we are leaders. And the question is, what kind? Now, the old model would have said, well, you're in charge, and if you're a leader, that means you tell people what to do, and they do it. We know that doesn't work very well and causes resentment, antagonism, and in history, rebellion eventually of one kind or another. So that old model is not the kind of leadership that we're talking about wanting to be. And most of us who've been part of that old model, either as the follower who was told what to do or the one who was giving the commands, most of us were pretty uncomfortable with it at some point. And that should tell us something about the old way of leadership. Now, Jesus was not that kind of leader, was he? And we know that. Jesus kept saying, those who would be first must become the servants of all. And he repeated this in one version or another all throughout the Gospels. And of course, we have the really ultimate scene of servant leadership at the Last Supper, when he washed the feet of the disciples and said, and you go and do likewise. Now, the final, close to the final scene of Jesus' life was one of teaching the apostles servant leadership, what I call servant leadership. Now, the two words are often kind of seem like they're contradictions, don't they? Servant and leader. But think about servant. servant is not a demeaning term at all. It simply means to be of assistance, to be of help. And so this kind of leadership that we're talking about, servant leadership, is leadership that is helping all of us, helping the whole community become better and to be more effective and so on. And a lot of organizations that have adopted servant leadership have found this out. Vanguard Investments is one company that I admire. It's been enormously successful, and they have over $1 trillion invested in their company. And John Bogle, who founded it, he described the kind of leadership he wanted in Vanguard Investment by using a scriptural command, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would wish them to do unto you. And if you remember nothing else, or if I remember nothing else about servant leadership, it's that. It's really the golden rule. Do to others as you would want them to do to you. And if we think about that as the foundation of servant leadership, then I think we can be much more effective and much more living and leading in the light of Christ than certainly the old model would have ever been able to teach us. So we're leaders. Now we need to decide what kind of leader we're going to be. And it is a choice, and we make it every day by the way in which we interact with and are in relationship with other people. Every leadership is about relationships. And what kind of relationships do we want to have? We want to have respectful, loving, caring relationships that give us all power to be the kind of people that God created us to be. And so my philosophy of leadership, and I wish I had learned it a lot earlier in my life, is what the leadership of Jesus and Francis and all the great saints and all the great leaders that we love and admire, and it's servant leadership. Leading like Christ, leading like Jesus would. Thank you.